Okay, so let's dive into a question that has sparked, literally centuries of debate between two of the world's largest Christian faiths. It's a fascinating story. It all begins with a ritual that millions of people share, the Eucharist, or what you might know as Holy Communion. But right at the center of it is this deep, profound mystery that has been a point of serious discussion for almost 500 years. And believe it or not, this entire mystery, this whole centuries-long conversation, really boils down to four simple but incredibly powerful words that were spoken at the Last Supper. That's it. This is my body. For centuries, Anglican and Catholic theologians have wrestled with what exactly those words mean, and that wrestling has created one of the biggest dividing lines between the two churches. There's actually a pretty dramatic name for this core disagreement. Theologians call it the punctum dolens, which is Latin for the sore point. And yeah, it really has been a sore point. Okay, so this brings us to the central concept that really became the historical dividing line, transubstantiation. Now, the Catholic Church uses this term to say that a real objective change happens to the very essence, the substance of the bread and wine. So even though it all still looks, feels, and tastes the same, what theologians call the accidents, its fundamental reality is believed to have literally changed. And historically, the opposition was, well, it was stark. You have the Catholic Council of Trent calling it an admirable and unique change. Then you have the Church of England's own foundational articles calling the doctrine repugnant to the plain words of the Scripture. This wasn't a minor disagreement. It was so profound that for hundreds of years, English kings and queens actually had to reject transubstantiation as part of their coronation oath. But, the story doesn't just stop there. Let's fast forward to the 20th century, because this is when a whole new chapter began, one that was actually focused on finding some common ground. So after all that time apart, that historic meeting back in 1966 kicked off something called ARCSIC, the Anglican Roman Catholic International Commission. For decades, theologians actually sat down together to try and bridge that historic gap. And what came out of it were these documents that did two things. They narrowed the differences, but they also, really crucially, sharpened the focus on what was still left to figure out. A huge breakthrough came in 1971 with something called the Windsor Declaration. And it really came down to the choice of a single word, become. That one word was a really big deal. It signaled a kind of coming together, a move away from purely symbolic ideas and toward a shared belief in a real transformation. And you can imagine, the Anglican side was hugely encouraged by this. The Lambeth Conference, which is a major gathering of their bishops, they came out and said this new language was substantially in consonance with Anglican teaching. They really saw it as a pathway to finally getting back together on this. But, and there's often a but, right? The Vatican saw it a little differently. While they absolutely appreciated the progress, they felt the language didn't quite close the gap. Their official response said that the word become still left ambiguity. It could be interpreted in ways that, for them, fell short of that complete, substantial change that's so central to Catholic doctrine. So, this kind of theological standoff has led a lot of modern thinkers to start asking a really fascinating new question. What if the problem isn't just theological? What if it's linguistic? Are we even capable of finding the right human words to explain something that's supposed to be a divine mystery? The philosopher Elizabeth Anscombe, she offered this incredible new way to think about it. She used this metaphor of a broken mirror. Imagine a presence that's whole and complete in every single tiny piece. It totally challenges our normal idea of what it even means for something to be in a specific place. Then you have Anglican theologian Catherine Pickstock, and she takes this a giant leap further. She argues that those four words, "this is my body," don't just describe a reality. They actually create it. For her, they're like the anchor point from which all other meaning flows. This isn't just a new interpretation. It's a completely radical reframing of the whole conversation. So Pickstock reframes transubstantiation not as some dry old formula, but as this profound philosophical event. She calls it a fusion of the sign, the bread, and the reality, the body, that's so extreme the bread isn't just a symbol anymore. It completely transcends our simple categories of presence and absence, and can only really be understood through the even bigger mystery of the resurrection. So after all that, this really brings us to the ultimate question, the one that's sitting right at the heart of this whole thing. At the end of the day, this entire conversation bumps up against the limits of our own human reason when it's faced with a divine claim. I mean, the whole debate is built on words like substance and reality, things we have a hard time defining even in our normal everyday world. You know, the 19th century theologian John Henry Newman, who famously converted from Anglicanism to Catholicism, I think he framed it perfectly. It's an issue of intellectual humility. He basically said, look, even the greatest philosophical minds in history know pretty much nothing about the ultimate nature of substance. So who are we to say what can and can't be possible? And this leaves us with a final, lingering thought. After all these centuries of debate, maybe the goal isn't to solve the mystery with some perfect formula. Maybe it's just to deepen our appreciation for how profound it is. What if the point isn't to explain it away, but to simply stand before it in wonder?